This is Derek Ogashi with another video on moving to Hawaii, moving to Oahu, and today I wanted to cover a topic that I've been getting asked about a lot. What is the housing market going to do? I talked about why the market's going to crash and why we should be scared and why we should be optimistic, and the main thing with that is inflation. Should we be optimistic that things might inflate or hyperinflation might be on its way? That's a double-edged sword, but if you own a house, it's usually a good thing. When I mention the negative things, I kind of tied them to positives. Not because I want to sell you, but just I wanted to give the counter. So I didn't do the best job of putting on my pessimistic hat and then my optimistic hat. Maybe we'll try that again later. But we did show a bunch of good points about why to be concerned, but also about why to invest and make smart decisions, whether it be your primary home or a secondary home or in another market. And if you are in another market, I can help you guys there as well. I'm a hard ass when it comes to interviewing agents for my friends and for family back on the mainland. I'll interview anywhere from 3 to 15 people to make sure that we find someone who's the right fit for you. No matter what market you're in, from Alaska to Florida to Maine to Hawaii, if you do have a real estate need and I seem like a guy that you can trust who gives it to you real, I'll do my best to find you the same type of person. All I do is real estate. I can't shut up about it. Hopefully this video is valuable to you guys. Make sure you stay tuned till the end. We're gonna tell you a pro tip about when you come to Hawaii. Here's one thing. Who has never subscribed to any YouTube channel ever, rarely ever clicks the like button, and almost never comments? That's me. But what I'd like to ask you for this video, for this channel, for us, is please hit subscribe, hit the like button, drop us a comment, connect. It really helps us to grow this channel. It really gives us the incentive and the feedback to keep doing these videos, to keep showing you the Hawaii neighborhood tours and vlogs and all of those things. Now let's get to the topic. So in terms of the housing market, this applies to every housing market in the United States, really. We are specialists and experts in the Hawaii market. So we're standing here, obviously, in one of the most beautiful places on earth. No matter where you're at, the housing market is crazy. Well, if I sell my house, where am I gonna go? Where am I gonna buy? Or should I buy now because housing prices have to drop, right? There's a good conversation there. There's a good reason to think that this can't continue. But there's also another conversation about why the housing market could continue to do what it's doing, and it probably will. But here's the thing, my crystal ball is broken, it doesn't work. I wouldn't want you to trust it if it was working. I've heard a saying that economists only exist to make fortune tellers look good. I've heard that said by Tony Robbins or something like that, maybe Zig Ziglar, I don't know. No one knows. You know, in 2008, nobody knew what the housing market was going to do. In hindsight, with all of the poor lending, stated income loans, balloon payments coming due, good loans wrapped into bad loans, call those BTOs, things of that nature. In hindsight, it was obvious, but at the time it wasn't, which is why so many people lost their savings, their retirement, their fortunes. So, is there something looming right now? I don't know, but let me put on a couple of different hats for you to explain it. I'm going to put on my optimistic hat and have that conversation. And I'll also put on my pessimistic hat and have that conversation. In the end, you make the decisions that's best for you, considering your entry point, so how much cash you're bringing to the situation, what kind of loan product you're using when buying a house, what's your motivation for buying, when are you selling, what are your exit strategies. All of those things are particular to you, and really, the conversation doesn't change much whether you're buying 4 years ago or 4 years from now. Charles Schwab and JP Morgan both did independent 15-year studies in the stock market, and they found that something like 7% of people, of investors, actually time and beat the stock market. The rest of everyone else averages what the S&P 500 or the total stock market index is doing, or worse, you know, or lose money. And of the people that match the market or beat it, some of them are getting lucky. So very few people skillfully time the market. And I wouldn't even say that I'm one of them. So for me, it's always be buying because I know my entries and my exits. But anyways, let's get to the point. Let me put on my pessimistic hat. Let me talk about why it's reasonable to think the housing market has to correct and this can't continue forever. There's a certain wage disparity where common middle-class people can no longer afford a certain priced home. Now, we obviously aren't there yet because here in EWA Beach, we're continuing to see multiple offers. Recently, we won an offer on a home that was originally listed at $838,000. So it was offered to the market at that. We're in escrow at $875,000 with an unlimited appraisal clause, other attractive terms. The craft of our offer was good and all. This home is probably going to appraise more around $840,000, and where my clients are willing to pay $875 because it makes sense for them. So we obviously aren't priced out yet, but we would eventually have to get there. You're right. So pessimistic hat on. Eventually, home prices, what that means in monthly mortgage payment has to exceed income disparity, because here in Hawaii, let's face it, wages do not go up proportional in line with cost of living. Cost of living seems to outrun wage growth here on the island, and that's why we do have a strong culture of unions and other things like that to try and protect those working class middle people. Point number one, it can't continue forever, basically. Next point in the pessimistic hat, there are all these landlords out there that have currently been experiencing tenants that are in forbearance, and they're tired of being landlords and they want to sell their place because their tenants haven't been paying rent. In my office, we do a lot of business, #1 growing real estate company. I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing a ton of landlords with tenants who are not cooperating who want to sell. That's anecdotal, but we just aren't seeing it in our brokerage, and we represent our own fair amount of the market share. I would imagine that agents in different metro areas on the mainland are experiencing the same things. If you have a different experience, if you're a landlord, if you have a home and you do have a tenant who's not paying or something, comment below. Let me know what your experience is. Eventually, these moratoriums on evictions are going to expire. And will the housing market then flood with inventory and prices go down? You gonna hear that? There's a gun range over there, so we have to pause. And it's hot. Wearing shoes at the beach, #1 taboo. But I was just in the office a mile or two up the street. This was spontaneous, The point I was making is there's a moratorium on evictions. Are these landlords gonna get frustrated, and once the moratorium expires in the different municipalities across the country, specific to Hawaii, they're just gonna start expiring soon? Are we gonna get this flood of inventory? Landlords and investors who wanna get out of the landlording business and sell their property, and they'll just take whatever, it'll drive prices down. I don't think so. With currently there being, depending on the asset, 10 to 30 offers on every house. If a few landlords want to sell their house, all that means is instead of 9 to 29 people not getting accepted, there'll be one more person who can buy a house in this market. I do not think that's enough to cool the market down. It's maybe like spraying a little spritz on a barbecue fire. It's not really going to affect much. What we're seeing, there aren't that many landlords. They're going to flood the market and drive down prices. Another thing with that, sort of similar to that, is foreclosures. In a healthy market, and I'll send Kenji the link, DS News had an article that said in a healthy market, about 1%, or I should say in a normal market, about 1% of loans are in some stage of the foreclosure process. So out of every 100 loans that take place, something happens. It could be divorce, it could be natural disaster, there was a flood here and the people decided to walk away from their home. Whatever the case may be, prior to the pandemic, we were lagging behind. With the health of the housing market, about 0.5 to 0.6% of loans were in a foreclosure stage, but traditionally it's been more about 1% of home loans were in some stage of the foreclosure process. With the moratorium on evictions and also the halt of foreclosures that happened during the pandemic, there are no foreclosures on the market, or very little, right? Those that had already started the process pre-pandemic. So are we going to get this flood of foreclosures that all of a sudden drives down the housing market? Well, if you've ever tried to buy a foreclosure or sell a foreclosure, you know that that is a long process. A foreclosure is a process of the debt holder, the debt servicer, actually taking back the home. There's a legal process. So they have to go through the entire process of taking the home back, eventually selling it. We could be talking years before this home is sold. And are we going to get a sudden rush? Is there going to be a dam lifted where the sudden rush of foreclosures hits the market and affects housing prices? Well, again, what we're experiencing here in the suburbs of EWA Beach, which is pretty common, in line within the suburbs of Austin or Orlando, Chicago, California. We're seeing 10 to 30 something offers on every home. So if all of a sudden we go from a 1% foreclosure rate to even a 5% foreclosure rate, are we all of a sudden going to have so much inventory at once that the housing market is driven down for good? I just can't see it, and the experts that I'm listening to, they don't see it. But again, I think we should try and look at the negative anytime we're weighing pros and cons of the housing market and what it might do. You know, and that's really it. We had a housing market event in 2008, and somewhere around 2010 to 11, we started the rebound. By 2014, prices were starting to get back to what they were in 2006, 2007. And now here we are in 2021. The housing market can't keep doing what it's doing, right? Unemployment. Yes, unemployment rates are up. There are people that don't want to go back to work and whatnot. I'm hearing where my parents live in Tennessee that they can't find people to work at the Buffalo Wild Wings. So the Buffalo Wild Wings is still closed because they can't get employees, because unemployment is more fruitful than working. Well, here's my challenge to you. Were those people affecting the housing market to begin with? Statistically, I don't think they were affecting the housing market. We had a very skilled loan officer, Stephen Kant from American Savings Bank. He used to work at the New York Stock Exchange, very savvy, smarter than I am. And he showed us the whole housing market statistic thing in the pandemic. My takeaway was that the jobs that were affected weren't really the jobs that were affecting the market. The middle to upper middle class jobs, the people who are mortgageable, they were still employed. And in fact, some of them experienced a higher level of job security, such as the healthcare field. Now let me put my optimistic hat on. The COVID pandemic, that couple of months, few months of dip in the housing market was almost like a natural cleansing that needed to happen. For one, we already have experienced a small correction. The starting point for this 20% appreciation was started in a dip, so that's something to consider. More importantly, and the big thing I wanted to talk about here is inflation. Now, if you own a house over the next few years from 2021 to 2023 or 24 or 25, and the house goes up 20 or 30% in value, do you care that the home appreciated versus inflated? You probably don't. You're just happy that you own that house and that it went up in value. So the question then is inflation on the rise? So my brother-in-law is a manager of one of the top electrician companies on the island, Watanabe Electric. He's who I refer everyone to if they need any electrician services. I was just at our niece's 21st birthday party speaking with both him and the owner, and they were saying that a bundle of copper coil that used to cost like around $50 or something, now costs $150. Depending if you're getting it retail or wholesale. Plywood used to cost 30 to 40 bucks for the 4x8 or whatever. Now in Home Depot, that plywood costs like $140. Cost of building materials is simply going up. They had this bid set up with these builders, and now they're gonna have to renegotiate it or just stop working. Same with the carpenters. The carpenters who are buying wood to build these new homes, they're at a point as we speak where they're gonna have to renegotiate their contract soon. So where is that cost passed on to? It's passed on to the consumer. If the house cost $800,000 before, now electrical has gone up by a multiple of 3. Lumber and plywood has gone up by a multiple of 3. Gas prices are going up. If inflation is becoming hyperinflation, now I don't know if it is, but if it's inflating at any rate, that gets passed on to the consumer. So are houses going to appreciate because job growth and GDP is on the rise? That I do not know. It is looking to me like home prices are going to inflate. Have you seen that game where you get in the plastic booth and there's money flying and you have to try and grab it as the air is blowing money all around in the sky? Well, inflation's kind of like that. The Obama administration approved something like $1 trillion of quantitative easing or printing of money over the course of their administration. Well, the Trump administration has a pandemic bailout plan approved like $1 trillion more. And then the Biden administration has just approved printing, quantitative easing, devaluing of the dollar, another $1 trillion. $2 trillion over the course of a year, or at least approved. So the banks may not release all of that. Some of those are tied up into stimulus packages and plans, and that gets to be a little complex and above me. All of the trillions may not be released at once, but nonetheless, $1 trillion Obama administration, $1 trillion as Trump was going out the door, $1 trillion as Biden came in the door, into his presidency. I have no political view left or right. The point is, if you print, if you had a certain amount of sand and you produce 3 trillion more pieces, Well, all that sand that was already there is devalued. There's no point, there's no getting around it. I just got 2 Canadian buyers recently. Shout out to Lee if you're out there. So, you know, he's explaining how Canadian currency is inching up towards the US dollar. And if that continues, if the US dollar devalues over time, then we're gonna see more and more foreign money come into the market. And that'll also help to stabilize the US housing market because you'll have new buyers introduced. For me, what I'm doing is I'm buying right now. I just bought my home here in Hawaii. I'm looking at buying another home on the mainland. Sorry, back to my analogy. In that plastic booth, they're printing the trillions of dollars and it's in the air. It's hard to grab, right? It's in circulation. When the money starts to fall, so when the inflation starts to set in, who gets that money? It's people who have a bucket to catch it. And those buckets are typically businesses. So like the electrician company that my brother-in-law works with, the home builders, carpenters and painting companies, the big tech companies of the world, the big finance companies of the world, the Edward Joneses of the world, the Schwabs of the world. We don't typically see them lose their shirt during a recession, right? We didn't see it last recession. We didn't see it the recession before. If they did experience any correction, they were able to rebound. So when they turn the air off in that plastic booth, and when that money starts to fall, you need a bucket to catch it. So if you don't own a big business or a corporation, or even a small business, then you should own real estate, historically. And so the buckets that I'm trying to create to collect this inflation, to collect this money, are real estate buckets. So each house that I own is a bucket to catch that money in the plastic booth when the air turns off and the money starts falling. Any financial guru will tell you that the W-2 employee does not end up getting that money. If inflation were coming, I can't say that it is or that it's happening. All I know is that copper is increased by a multiple of 3, lumber is increased by a multiple of 3 or 4 or more. Gas prices are up and almost doubling in some areas. So if inflation is happening, do you want to own a house or not own a house? Ask a surgeon if you should have surgery, the answer is yes. Ask a dentist if you should have a cleaning, the answer is yes. Now I get it. Ask realtors with all their realtor information if you should buy a house. They're typically going to trend towards yes. But here I am stating that in the open. What I would prefer to do is sit down with you, talk about your entry, your motivation to enter the housing market, your stability. Are you using a VA loan where you really have nothing tied into the asset? When these major economic events happen, typically the government comes out with a bailout package for VA loans. Because why? They can't have a third of the US military losing their security clearance because they're in bankruptcy and foreclosure. So they typically bail those people out. So is that your loan product where you really have no skin in the game? Are you putting all of your life savings, which is $60,000 down on an FHA loan, where if you lost it, it would kill you, and you're planning to sell this home in 3 years? Are you putting $300,000 down where your loan to value is very healthy? If you had to rent it, you'd be fine because you'd be cash flowing, and you're gonna be in Hawaii for 10 years, where history shows that over a 10-year period, Hawaii homes about always do good. They always appreciate. Rather than talk about whether the housing market's gonna do good or do bad, what I'm doing right now with my clients is I'm talking about, is inflation coming? Are there real reasons to fear a housing market crash, whether in Hawaii or nationally? I really like to focus on the negative with my clients. I really like to put on that pessimistic hat and talk about why the market could crash or why I should have speculation, because I think speculation is healthy. At the same time, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I just purchased a home 2 months ago amidst all of this chaos. Literally, when we get in the van and head back to my office 2 miles from here, I'm gonna call my cousin in Georgia and talk about buying a second home, an investment property. I want assets if inflation is coming. I promised you a pro tip. Hawaii beaches are crowded. If you live in Ewa Beach, Kapolei, Barbers Point, White Plains Beach, which was my home surf spot growing up, that gets crowded. Waikiki's crowded. Lani Kai and KAILUA for my KAILUA video, that gets crowded. Here at the very end of Fort Weaver Road, all the way at the end, you can find yourself to be one of few groups, if not the only person on the beach. In between this park and Haubush, Oneula Beach Park, up the beach a little bit. In between here, there's some access roads in between the houses. You could be the only person on the beach. So outside of your neighbors with these beautiful homes, you'd be the only person around and just have this beautiful coast to yourself. So anyways, guys, that was just a little bit of a riff, a little bit of a rant on what I think the housing market's doing, my observations, both my speculation and my optimism, my calculated risks and decision making. I'm buying a house right now, but that does not mean that it's the right thing to do for you. Please consult your mortgage professional, your real estate professional. That's me if you're coming to Hawaii. Please like, subscribe, connect with us. Let us know what you guys want to see next. Hopefully in the next video, we'll be in the car and driving around more of this beauty and showing you a Hawaii neighborhood tour. Your feedback, your likes, your comments, your subscribes really helps the channel to grow. There's an algorithm that YouTube uses. And every time that you engage, it helps the channel blow up. And we want to keep doing that so we can keep bringing you guys value, keep showing you more of the island, keep helping you make good decisions, and just keep showing you paradise. So check it out.